I'm going to read you a quote, and I'm curious if you know who it's by. It says, if you want to write, write. If you can't write, read. Do you know who said that?
No.
That was your first tweet on September 25th, 2014. And I'm wondering, since you can write, do you read a lot? And what's the relationship for you between reading and writing?
I disagree with myself now. What is it? If you so say it again.
If you want to write, write. If you can't write, read.
Oh yeah, see, I would change that now too. If you want to write, write. If you can't write, write.
Mm.
I mean, so to answer your question, do I read a lot? Yes. Do I think reading is important? Yes. Do I think people prioritize reading more than they should? Yes. Do I think that reading should ever, the amount of time reading should ever exceed the amount of time creating or writing? If you want to be a creator or writer, no. I think reading is important, but I think nothing teaches you more about whatever it is that you want to do. We'll use writing as the example. Nothing teaches you more about writing than writing.
I mean, it's crazy how much you've written over the years. Like, just, I don't think that, let's say, Money Twitter in particular really understands like how much of an OG you are in terms of like online writing. And you've had a successful blog, very successful blog since like 2007. And then in 2014, when you started writing on Quora, I heard you say something like, if enough people read my writing, something's going to happen, right? Like, you don't set out necessarily with a specific goal in mind when you're just getting going. You know, you want to be a creator, but you trust the process. And don't you have to really embody that, like, especially as a beginner creator, that self-belief? It's almost like law of attraction. You just have to go and just trust that something's going to happen and know that your content is worth it.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up actually, because so yesterday I was leaving the gym. I was doing physical therapy yesterday. I used to be really into bodybuilding. I herniated a disc in my neck in 2016, and that kind of put the kapush on that. And then I really struggled to do any sort of exercise for the few years after that. Tried doing rehab, tried doing yoga, tried doing light workouts. And then when I moved to Miami a year ago, so let's see, injured in 2016. So almost like 5 or 6 years later, I just was like frustrated. I was just frustrated that I wasn't exercising. I didn't feel healthy in my body. And so I signed myself up for a gym. And even though I've had a lot of pride against, not hiring a trainer, because I always trained by myself or I trained with other guys and I sort of had my own routine and my way of doing things, I signed myself up to get a personal trainer as well to just hold me accountable and be like, I got to push through this plateau. Like, I got to do something. And over the past year, my body's improved a lot. And now I do personal training, and I've also got PT coming back into it. So it's like, why am I saying all this? Because I was leaving the gym yesterday, and it occurred to me that it was the same process I went through with writing, which is, in the beginning, volume solves everything. I think I was so afraid of re-injuring myself. I was so afraid of not doing something right. I was uncomfortable because like my body didn't feel the same way it used to. And so I kept just shying away from the volume. And then eventually I got frustrated and was like, I'm just going to solve this problem with volume. I'm just going to push through even though it's uncomfortable. And that's exactly what I had to do with writing as well. I didn't know where my writing was going to go. I just knew that sitting at my desk thinking about it wasn't solving the problem. And so I do believe that in the beginning, there really isn't much to do on the thinking side. It's really not, there's not much to do in terms of getting it right or getting it perfect. The only thing to do is volume, because volume reveals whatever needs to happen next. But until you have volume, you have no insight into, here's how I can improve. Here's what I can double down on. At the gym, okay, now I have volume. All right, now I know what exercises I need to prioritize. Now I know what muscle groups are weak. Now I know what I need to improve in terms of balance and mobility. Like, you can't know any of those things until you put in the volume. Same thing with writing.
You just have to get the feedback like from yourself, from the market, from the gym, like from your body, whatever it is. I found that content creation is very much a personal development journey because you kind of learn about yourself just by creating and getting feedback. And so eventually something's going to kind of hit. And like you said, kind of tripling down. And people say success is when preparation meets opportunity. So when on Quora, you had that first post, it had the before after picture, went crazy. And you immediately jumped in with ebooks, right? And that weekend you were like, okay, I'm going to capitalize on this attention. And so you were making money like because you were ready to go. Like not necessarily you had this long history of ebooks, but you were just chomping at the bit. And then when the opportunity came, you had to strike. So like, or you knew to strike. And do you think that's important that people like when they're pushing and pushing, it's not just about, okay, you're going to get that break at some point. And it's like, but you have to be ready to then monetize or take it to whatever that next level is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer that skill trumps everything. I get emails every day from people who want to be writers, and a lot of the emails that I get are people saying, I need you to give me an opportunity. But the most brutally honest answer is I can give someone an opportunity, but if they are not ready for it, or if they are not putting in the work to capitalize on it, the bottleneck is not the opportunity or the lack of opportunity. The bottleneck is their own skill, or the bottleneck is their own willingness to constantly improve the skill. So actually, an even better example was I had been writing on Quora for like maybe 2 years, started in 2014. I think I got this opportunity in 2016. I got introduced to the head editor at Inc. magazine. And at the time, Quora had this really cool partnership program where major publications were pulling Quora answers and republishing them on major publications. I figured this out. I started writing Quora answers deliberately to get picked up. I think I set the record for number of Quora answers that got republished in Time and Forbes and Inc. and like every major publication, minus, the New York Times and stuff like that. And I got introduced to the head editor, and Inc. was republishing one of my Quora answers every single week for months. And when I got connected to the head editor, I was like, hey, I would love to have a column with Inc. magazine. And they were like, yeah, we love your content. Sure, we're totally open to that. So they gave me the opportunity and said, we're going to give you a column. And when they gave me the column, they said, would you be willing to write a column for us once a week? So 4 columns a month. And at the time, the partnership they had with their writers was they would pay their writers per page view. It was something like a penny per page view. And so the way that the math worked out, it was like if you could bring in 500,000 views a month or something, you would roughly napkin math, you'd make a couple grand. And I was working a full-time job at the time. I think my salary was like 45,000, 48,000 something per year. I was not making a lot. And I saw writing on Inc. magazine as a way out. I was like, wow, I know how to write things people want to read. I know how to go viral. There's no limit to what I can earn. I'm getting paid per page view. So here's my opportunity. And they asked, can you write a column every week? And I said, can I write a column every day? And that was my way of going, you're going to give me this opportunity. You're going to open the door a little bit. I'm not going to just like squeeze my way into the door. I'm going to open the door fully, and I am going to exploit this opportunity. And that's what I did. And for the next year and a half, 2 years, I wrote every day on Quora, and I wrote every day on Inc. magazine. I was one of the only writers on the publication writing upwards of 30 columns a month. I brought in millions and millions of page views for them. I ended up as almost replacing my full-time income just writing on Inc. That gave me a little bit of savings and buffer to quit my job. That gave me the runway. That's how I started my first company, my ghostwriting agency. So it's like, yeah, this like opportunities can come your way, but you have to be prepared to fully take advantage of them. And the only way that you can do that is if you're doing the work on your own that nobody's seeing, by yourself. And then when someone finally gives you the opportunity, they're like, oh, you're the perfect person for this. I say, yeah, because I was training and doing that all by myself on Quora for 2-3 years before that. So anyway, yeah, long-winded way of agreeing with you, but I am such a firm believer in that you can make it about anything else you want to, but skill is always the bottleneck. And so unless you are actively prioritizing skill, you are making it very difficult for yourself to ascend anywhere else.
I want to go back to something that you talked about in the beginning of that answer that I think is really important that people are overlooking potentially. And it's this idea of hacking for growth. And you figured out a way that, you saw that Inc. and Fortune and all these companies were looking to Quora, and they were looking at a certain format, and they were taking that and then putting it on a larger platform. And I did something really similar actually when I was pivoting my content, which I was like, okay, how do I get exposure now in like this new niche when I want to talk about growth and writing and money and health or whatever it might have been that I was trying to figure out. And I said, okay, I'm going to go to people that have video content on YouTube and they have large Twitter followings of 6 figures or more. And if I go to their like and replies tab, I see them interacting with smaller accounts that maybe they don't follow. They're not just their friends, not whatever. They're actually interact, and not just their comment section either. They're looking in their notifications. And if people tag them in normal posts, they're actually fucking with it. And so I did this. And within about 3 weeks, I went viral like 12 times. And by taking video content from these creators and then bringing it to Twitter, by making short little video clips into threads, knowing that they were probably going to see it. And I had aligned myself with their best interest, which was promoting their content. And I actually did this with you and Dickie. I did a thread on one of your awesome espresso hour videos where you broke down like a perfect email funnel. And I think that might have been one of the first times that we ever connected. You might have followed me off that. So I do recommend this strategy to people to get in front of people that you admire. But all that to say, like, I think there's such an interesting parallel with what you did with Quora, because it's like you noticed there was a hack for exposure. Let me tailor my content in a way that those people with the eyeballs will want to repurpose my content. And so how important do you think it is for people to kind of like play this meta game and figure out the different ways? It's not just about what you want to create, but maybe what you have to create in order to get it pushed.
I think what you said there at the end is really key. I mean, there have been a lot of things that I've done over the course of my writing career that I did because they were necessary, not necessarily because I wanted to do them. My background is when I was a teenager, I was a pro gamer, World of Warcraft player. And so I think my brain is just wired to understand that sometimes if you want the epic sword and shield, you got to go do a bunch of quests that are really annoying, right? And that's how I think about entrepreneurship, building digital businesses, and even building myself as a writer. Is there's the fun stuff and there's the really annoying quest lines that you have to do just because they're necessary. More broadly, what you're talking about, and this is something I've been writing more about recently, and was really the inspiration behind my book, The Art and Business of Online Writing. And that sort of spawned this series coming out soon with The Art and Business of Ghostwriting. Is I've always found it interesting that people in the art world don't really study the business world, and people in the business world don't really study the art world. And I've always had this challenge as a writer. Like, my degree is in fiction writing. My college experience was art, and I learned a lot about the art of writing. I didn't learn anything about the business of it. I didn't learn anything about business models or marketing or different ways of thinking about monetizing. And conversely, as I've entered the world of business and I've built multiple companies and I've made friends with entrepreneurs and I've ghostwritten for all these Silicon Valley founders and investors and CEOs of publicly traded companies, it's like I've gotten so much insight into how the business world operates. But if you talk to anyone in that world, I don't want to say anyone, but the vast majority of people, and you even start having a conversation called, what would it look like to create something not for monetary gain? What would it look like to create something just because it's really interesting or really cool or no one's done it before? It's very hard for marketers to think that way. It's hard for a marketer or someone really deep in business to go, why would I do something where the end isn't a guaranteed financial outcome? And so I've always struggled with that. I have a foot in both worlds. And as a result, I study both, and I think that it's important, especially in the world that we're in today, where so many people can be so many different types of things. Your favorite influencer isn't just an influencer. Like Jake Paul's launching companies now, and it's like you can be a entrepreneur and you can be a pro boxer or a pro athlete, and you can release music and you can write books and you can, like, the rules on this game have changed so much that for me, I really don't understand why more people, and I'd say more writers especially, aren't focused on having a foot in both worlds. And so what you're describing, this growth hacker mentality, I associate that more on the business side. And I think it's important, and I think it's an amazing skill to build. But where I see so many people go wrong is they go, okay, I got really good at hacking the algorithm, but then you go to like the art side, the quality of what's being said, and it's like, okay, great, like you hacked your way to 70,000 followers and you publish shit, right? Like you're like you're over rotated. You have 100% on one side and 0% on the other side, or 90% and 10%. And then you see the other side of the barbell where someone writes really high quality stuff, produces amazing insights, but they are so underdeveloped on the business side or the marketing side or the growth hacking side that their business model's all wonky. They're not making any money. Their distribution's upside down. They're not getting the attention their thoughts deserve, right? Why? Because the art side is overdeveloped and the business side is underdeveloped. And so I'm just the more that I spend time building and playing in this game, the more I feel strongly about educating others on the importance of nurturing both.
Yo guys, real quick, if you're enjoying the Louder podcast, you're gonna love Louder Spaces. My partner Virgil and I are hosting Twitter Spaces rooms 3 times a week. And what we've done is create a real audio experience. We bring in influential guests, we use custom audio intros, bring in outside clips, and we have guests react. And we have what's called Amplify, where we bring up audience members and we all share the love by liking, commenting, retweeting their content, and getting them tons of exposure. You could be the next person we blow up. Just come by Louder Spaces on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern. Follow me on Twitter at GregLunt27. See you there. That can be a little intimidating for some people, like, because maybe they're getting, if you're just starting, let's say, like, there's so much to learn. It's like, well, I need to learn how to write, but then I also need to learn how to do business. And it's like, or I'm good at business, but now I need to learn how to like be a creative writer and then write specifically for the platform. There's all this stuff. And one of the biggest things I think that beginners, as you know, run into is like, well, what do I even write about? That's like the biggest question, right? And it's, you obviously have come up with this endless idea generator, which is great. And it kind of focuses on things that you've done in your recent history in your life. And can you take some from those experiences and then assist them to expand and give you ideas. On your website, you have a breakdown by year almost of like all the things that you've accomplished and things that you are up to and were doing over the course of the last decade, let's say. I put out a similar tweet. I've been recommending this to people, right? As an exercise is to literally write out the year number, 2010, 11, 12, 13. And I wrote down one positive thing that happened to me that year or that I did, and one negative thing that happened to me that year or that I did. And I made a long tweet out of that whole timeline, and it did great. And now I can take each one of those and make those its own long tweet or its own email newsletter or its own whatever. So if I'm just starting out, our personal stories and experiences, that's really the lifeblood of potential content, right?
Yes and no. So you said a lot of interesting things in there. So first of all, on a meta level, I actually don't think that the real bottleneck for people is not knowing what to write about. I think where people get in their own way is they really build up this decision of, what do I want to be known for? I think the big mental obstacle is this almost, it's like a legacy question where people go, well, if I write about that and then they play it out, if I write about that and I become known for that, what does that say about me? And it's funny the extremes that people take it to. And I know because I did it myself too, is you go, well, if I write about crypto one time, then all of a sudden I'm only going to be known as a crypto writer. And then the rest of my life has to be centered around that. And that's a faulty belief. Like, first of all, you're playing out this grandiosity that you write about one thing and then just magically the whole world associates you and that thing forever. Like, wow, good on you for thinking it was that easy. Right. But secondarily is there's also the faulty belief that you can't ever change. It's like I've lived so many different lives. Like, I had my gaming era, I had a bodybuilding era, I had a ghostwriting era, I had a entrepreneurship. And before that, I wanted to work in advertising. I thought I was going to be a creative director. And I like wrote about all these things at different chapters. And in some cases, I even built products around them. Like my first product was an ebook about how to get shredded. Like most people don't know that. And so it's a faulty belief to think you can't ever pivot and change. The thing to internalize is that it takes a lot more work than you think it does, and no one's paying attention to you. Nobody's paying attention to you. And you should see that as freeing. Like go on the journey and figure out what you want to write about. The point about personal stories, so this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest misunderstandings in terms of the like creator world. Your story doesn't matter. Nobody gives a fuck. The only time people care is when your story adds context to a problem that the reader is dealing with. So for example, if I'm writing about entrepreneurship, nobody cares that I built an agency as my first company. If all my content was just like, I built an agency, people are like, I don't care. But if I go, hey, are you building an agency? Are you trying to scale from 2 employees to 10 employees? Are you running into these friction points? Is this your problem? Here's how to solve it. And by the way, for context, my story is I solved it. I ran into this when I was building my first agency. Well, now you care. But the question is, why do you care? And the answer is you care because the story that I'm telling you adds context and credibility to the problem I am helping you solve. And this, it's a very subtle difference. It's so simple, it's complicated. So when people are like, your story matters. No, your story doesn't matter. What matters is the category of problem that you are helping someone solve. And then the story adds color, it adds context, it adds human emotion, right? But the story is not the main character. You are not the main character. The problem and the category is the main character. And until you come to terms with that, or until you get that clarity within yourself, you actually don't know who you're creating for, because you're just talking about yourself. You're just like, as long as I tell my story, I attract my tribe. Shut up. That doesn't mean anything. Right. And I have such strong opinions on this because I see so many talented creators like leave all the opportunity on the table because they can't wrap their head around the fact that they aren't what matters. Your reader is who matters. The problem you're helping them solve is what matters. The category, the niche is what matters. You are secondary, period.
That's something that I learned from you reading your materials. I'll just say it again so people can hear it, is you are not the main character, the reader is. So your story and your opinion is only as relevant as it is relevant to them and what they're trying to accomplish. And so it's really in the transformation that you share from your story that someone can pull value from. That's what's important. And I do another show with NFT god Alex Finn, and we do like a Twitter workshop. It's called the Twitter Growth Show. It actually comes out tomorrow on Twitter. It'll be super cool. Well, when this comes out, it'll have already come out. Anyway, we break down people's tweets and threads, and one of the things that we constantly see is people writing, because we promote these long tweets. I think they're really cool, these plus 280 characters. The people just say, so here's what I did today, and here's like we went on this and we did this, and here's my journey. And it's like, no one fucking cares, dude. Like literally nobody cares. And we kind of have it's a little bit of like a roast style, because it's like you need to hear that truth. And I'm just wondering, like, you write a lot of stuff online that is going to meet people right away, and does it impact them? Is the story that I'm telling framed properly? That getting that feedback in real time, and that's a grind, right? The volume that you talked about that you put out, depending on where you were in your career, it's always volume, volume, volume. And then you also have written a lot of books, which is also very volume based, maybe a little more behind the scenes with the long tail feedback. So I'm curious, can you compare like the daily grind of writing online versus the daily grind of writing a book?
Yeah, I mean, you need both. You need the daily feedback to see what's working and to improve. It has taken me a long time to realize, like, there are much better ways to make $1 million than write books. Like, getting rich off writing books is very hard. It can certainly happen. There's outliers. But it is far from the most lucrative and highest leverage monetization vehicle. The honest reason why I write books is because I really enjoy it. Like, my books could make me $0. I would still write them because that was always my dream. I wanted to be a writer. I really always enjoyed the book format. And I'm at this point in my career where I understand what I'm optimizing for. I understand what I want to write about. I understand how I want to write about it. But I got there through 10,000 hours or more. When you're first starting out, trying to learn with the feedback loop of a book is very difficult, because a lot of it's just you sitting in your apartment or your house or wherever, your coffee shop, and it takes too long for you to put something together, put it out into the world, and then get feedback. And the reality is, like, the example I like to use is my first book was a memoir about my years as a teenage gamer. And my second book was The Art and Business of Online Writing. First book took me 4 years to write. Second book took me 4 months to write. First book made me, $5,000. Second book has made me multiple six figures. Both were self-published. And so when you start to look at the tangible outcomes, the results of the second book relative to the first book, there's genre differences, but the biggest difference was the first book I wrote entirely on my own in my apartment with no external feedback loop. And my second book is essentially the expanded version of everything I had already written on the internet that had data saying this is what readers value. And so my personal belief, like, even though now I want to write more books, I want to write different types of books. I want to do nonfiction. I'd like to expand more into fiction. There's different forms that I'd like to play with, but I'm never going to stop the short form, because the short form is my engine. The short form is my data gathering machine. The short form is my infinite rapid fire feedback loop, right? So I think you need the rapid fire feedback loop, and then you need these longer tail bets. Like, these books might not make me a ton of money in the short term, but they're going to be available for sale and be around for the next 50 years. That's like owning a rental property every time I finish a book. It's pretty good.
Twitter's kind of a cheat code like that, right? In terms of getting that feedback, and nothing like it has really ever existed. Well, something now. There's this app, Threads, and you were a World of Warcraft player, one of the best players in North America, and you tweeted or threaded or posted, I don't know what they're called. You posted on Threads right when it came out. You said that new social platforms feel identical to the launch week of a new MMORPG.
Identical.
So can you explain what an MMORPG is and what that feeling is, and then also your feelings on the Threads app?
Yeah, so an MMORPG is a massive multiplayer online role-playing game. And in the world of MMOs, when a new I mean, it could be a game, but it's usually an expansion to a game because then you have all these people that already know what the game is. There's all this hype. And on the first day, it's like the new expansions come out. There's this long queue. Everyone's trying to log in at the same time. You can't log in. It's buggy. No one knows what to do in the world yet. Everyone's in the starting zone looking at each other. Uh, it's way more of a social event than it is a gaming event. And I've had so many, I mean, over the years, even though I stopped playing WoW a long time ago, every time a new expansion comes out, I like clear my calendar. I go to the grocery store and get popcorn and chips and salsa and coconut water, and I load up on provisions, and I'm like, I'm just gonna enjoy this moment because it's always a cool moment. Because it's like a social event. And new social platforms, I realized, feel identical. Like if you were on Threads in the first 24, 48 hours and you've ever played an MMORPG before, you know what I'm talking about, because every post on Threads in the first 24 hours was like, what are we doing here? It was like everyone talking to everyone, it's like, what are we doing here? What's cool? Do we make jokes here or not? Like, what does Twitter think about this? It's this really special moment. And then after that first 48 hours, it feels totally different. All of a sudden, then people just go about, it's like everyone started with their quests and everyone's like, I treat this platform this way. And so the magic wears off. But the first 48 hours is a really special time.
It's so true, man. It's just it is. It's that it reminds me a little bit. I was on Vine in the early days,
Uh-huh.
and part of it is just like it's an exploration of like this is a whole new way to do, not that Threads in itself was a new innovative platform, but just it was a new world, a new experience that
New
we were
world.
all trying to say, is there something different here? How do we use this? What are we doing? But we're all here together. Isn't that cool? And
Yep.
yeah, I really enjoyed that. And there are going to be opportunities that come out of this app probably. Like I think a lot of people will take it seriously, and they're going to need to put out content, and it feels like in some ways it's like just some people look at it like it's another platform that I need to create for, and it can be like a burden. And even one platform for some people, depending on what you're doing in life, if you're a successful business person or what have you, you have a family and you just have all this stuff going on, but that personal branding and content is a main part of the game. Well, it's like, okay, maybe I should consider a ghostwriter, right? And this is obviously something that you have experience in, and now you've just launched the Premium Ghostwriting Academy as well. And there's such an abundance of demand with those type of people. Like there's a lot, like you either have money or you have time is kind of the classic saying. And a lot of the ghostwriters are the ones with the time. And it's like, I can take my time and you give me your money that you don't have the time. Let's make that mutually beneficial exchange. And let me take your ideas and package them and promote them or put them on your channels, and let's grow your ideas and I'll do it for you. And there's so many people that can use this service. And you talk about like, hey, do it for free in the beginning, right? Do some for people that, hey, here's like, I read your book, or I read an article you wrote, or I watched a YouTube video with you. And here's like some tweets that I would put out around your ideas in your own voice. Take them, use them if you want. If you want more, let me know. I'll do, and so you show yourself, and it leads to opportunities. Do you get frustrated that so many people are wanting this type of service and that people don't realize that it's so in need, like that there's such an opportunity for potential ghostwriters and online writers to become ghostwriters?
I mean, I don't get frustrated by it. I just think it's an exciting thing. Like I just want more writers to know that it exists. Like if I'm sure every generation feels this way about the previous generation or the next generation, which is, if I was 19 years old right now and I was interested in writing and I was spending some time on Twitter or whatever the platform was, and I had a little bit of knowledge around writing on the internet, and someone introduced me to the concept of ghostwriting, there is a world where I don't go to college and all of a sudden I'm just making six figures as an internet ghostwriter. And it's fun to think about, boy, how different it would be if I was 19 in today's day and age again, which again, I'm sure every generation feels that way. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's such a low hanging fruit opportunity to go after because you have so many people creating both video and audio assets. If you have a YouTube channel, you need text content. If you have a podcast, you need text content. If you're big on TikTok or Instagram Reels, probably need text content. At some point, all roads lead back to text content. The thing, though, is that all of the hard work's already done. They already recorded the videos. They already recorded the podcast episodes. All the thinking is there. All the content is already there. All you have to do is be proficient in taking a transcript and reformatting it in a tweet, or formatting it into a thread or a LinkedIn post or a Medium article, and teaching someone how to write. Like this is what's interesting, is that writing is not this massive skill set. Most people think of writing as it's this one big thing. It's not. Writing is broken up into parts. There is the thinking component of writing, which usually in nonfiction means you've acquired knowledge over a long period of time. Writing is the vehicle to communicate knowledge. Writing is the vehicle for answering questions in text. Okay, so there's the thinking component, which if you're a new writer, this was me graduating college, you don't have that. You don't have anything valuable to say. So you're like, I have some of the skills of writing, but I don't have the thinking. Okay, great. So you got to go find someone with the thinking. It's an industry leader, someone who's been doing something for a long period of time. Then you have the formatting skill. So the formatting is, okay, great. Now, what do you want to say and how do you want to say it? Organizing it. In what order should it go? Where do we use subheads? How do you alternate subheads with bulleted lists? Writing rhythms, like one of the things we teach in Chip 30 is like the 1-3-1 technique, opening one sentence, 3 sentences of description, closing one sentence, right? So there's all these little formatting things that you can do. So that's another skill. Then you also have platform languages. Writing on Twitter is very different than writing on LinkedIn, which is very different than writing on Instagram Threads now, which is different than writing on Medium, which is different than writing on Quora, which is different than writing on your blog. So if you want to be a quote unquote full stack writer, it's like, how many different platform languages do you know? Just like a developer knows C++ and Python, and, if JavaScript's a thing now, I don't know. I'm not a coder, right? So it's the same thing for writing. It's like, what are all the different languages you know? And then there's all these like sub layers within it. So writing as a skill and then it's like newsletters versus ebooks versus educational email courses versus YouTube scripts versus, right? So when you piece all that together, you realize, wow, there is an overwhelming amount of opportunity. There's never been more creators ever creating video and audio assets where the thinking's already done, the content's done, and they will throw money at you. They will willingly pay you to take the content they've already created and just turn it into text and then post it on 1, 2, or 3 platforms. And you can make 6 figures doing that from your sweatpants. It's a joke. And so for me, I'm not frustrated. I'm just like waving the flag, being like, hey, if you're a writer and you're sitting there complaining about how no one makes a living as a writer, you're wrong. A lot of people are making a living. All you got to do is just go start here.
Yeah, yeah, maybe frustrated is the wrong word, but for me, it's that same thing.
Passionate.
It's just like, hey, hello, like, anybody home?
Yeah.
And people will start to realize, they are realizing, I think slowly, at least on Twitter, obviously ghostwriting and ghostwriting agencies are starting to really pick up there, but it hasn't really made its way into, I guess, as you say, maybe like the college kid world and stuff like that, like where maybe that might be one of the first pockets. I'm not sure, but it'll expand, I think. And you mentioned like all these different aspects of writing. And now we have one thing you didn't mention, which is like AI, and ChatGPT is a whole other like way to use that. And, another, I subscribe to the Start Writing with AI newsletter, and, there's a lot, the kind of, I guess the general sentiment is, people understand now that, okay, AI is maybe not going to replace writers, but it will complement writers and it will help them come up with ideas and structures. But you still don't see a lot of people offering like really solid frameworks around like, okay, I understand like AI will help, but like, how do I use it exactly? And so, like I said, the newsletter that you've put together is really, really helpful. And some of the frameworks that I've seen you create are so specific and like actually tangible that have helped me. How do you see like the ChatGPT AI situation playing out with writers and just all the opportunity there as well?
So I think it's worth keeping in mind that with every technological innovation, yes, it replaced some things, but really what it did is reduce the barrier to entry and make the whole thing bigger. So I am not in the camp of AI is going to replace writers. I think AI is going to produce 10 times more writers. Uh, and it's just going to be on the writers to accept what's happening and to master new skills. Instead of like the natural progression is instead of, Mad Men era, right? Like the job of being a copywriter and sitting in a room and coming up with a quippy tagline for Sarah Lee, right? That job might be going down in value. It might even disappear, but it's going to be replaced by, you know, AI Mad Men era, a room of writers that are leveraging AI and they aren't writing taglines, they're writing prompts. Like that's the aha is it it's not that your job as a writer is going away, it's that it is changing is step one. And you have to be okay with that change. No different, it all comes back to gaming. At the end of the day, everything's a video game. And so it's no different than if you were playing World of Warcraft in 2007. The game was really different before they released their first expansion. And when the first expansion came out, the game changed. Items changed, dungeons changed, rules changed, spells changed. You had to adjust to the game. And then 2 years after that, the next expansion came out. Game changed again. You didn't like it? Tough luck. Like the game's changing, right? And so the same is true in life and business. Is the game continues to change, and it's you have one of two choices. You either adapt and you continue to change with it, and the faster you're able to adapt, the more you're able to capitalize on what's happening, the more you benefit from it. Or if you choose, I don't want to change, you dig your feet, into the sand and you go, no, I don't want to do this. Well, then you also don't be surprised when other people lap you and the opportunities go to them and not you. It's just, this is very Darwinian, survival of the fittest, right? So it's all about embracing that. And I think the final point is if AI and ChatGPT immediately removed your job, you should look at it through a positive lens in the sense that it revealed to you how replaceable you always were. And that's very tough for people to internalize. They take it very personally. And you have to not take it personally. You have to look at it like, I had a skill bottleneck. Again, it all goes back to skill over everything. I had a skill bottleneck. I either didn't know I had the skill bottleneck or I was lying to myself and didn't want to admit it. Game changed. It just got pointed out to you brutally. And now you have the opportunity. You can either sit there and go, this is frustrating, or you can, cancel your weekend plans, stay in, educate yourself, read a bunch, take a course or two, buy a book, watch some YouTube videos, educate yourself, speed up, right? Get to the edge of the innovation, what's evolving, and acquire a new skill and go monetize it. And it's not ever as hard as people think it is. It's like you have the internet, you have all the knowledge you could ever ask for. Like plant yourself down for a weekend, go to the grocery store, get provisions, get some chips, coconut water, right? And cold brew, and sit there and educate yourself and build a new skill and then go monetize it. It is not that difficult. It's just what's difficult is that we don't raise children in a world where we teach them how to learn. So for a lot of people, especially our generation and older, the thought of needing to take ownership and educate yourself and then you take control of your own future and destiny is very uncomfortable because that's not the narrative that was given to us or to our parents when they were growing up.
The best entrepreneurs and business people that I talk to and content creators, they're all getting excited about AI. Whereas the people that are maybe, I think, not going to work out as much are the ones that, like you say, they either get frustrated about it or even worse, they just ignore it and they say, oh, you know what, I'll do it later, or it's probably just a fad, or whatever they say that just like some like cope, right? Where they're just trying to realize that try to tell themselves that it's not important because they don't want to do that work. They don't want to acquire that skill. And the game is changing, and a lot of people are going for this like solopreneurship kind of style, which you can do, and it's great. But I've always like envisioned having a partner in business. I think there's like a lot of benefits to that, and not just being a lone wolf. You are partnered with Dickie Bush in multiple businesses. I'm curious, what is the best part about having an awesome partner in business, and what do you love about Dickie?
So many things. I could write a whole love letter to Dickie at this point. Um, I mean, the best part is that it's just not lonely. You know, entrepreneurship's lonely. Grinding away on things for a long time is lonely. Um, but more importantly, you know, making decisions by yourself is hard. You don't have that counterpoint. You don't have that other perspective. And one of the things that Dickie and we say all the time to each other is how much we appreciate our differences. You know, we're very different people. We think about things in very different ways. We also have a lot of similarities and a lot of overlap. But I love when, you know, I come up with an idea and he stress tests it, or he comes up with an idea and I stress test it. I ask him questions he didn't consider and vice versa. And so having someone that helps you think about things in very different ways and complements your skill set is massively powerful. That said, I understand the solopreneurship wave. You know, after building my first company, I was feeling really burnt out. You know, we got up to, I think at our height, we had about 23 full time employees. And I was in a place where I was like, I never want employees ever again. You know, like it was just a really taxing first business. First businesses are hard. You learn a lot of lessons the hard way. And I went through a period of time too where I was like, I am doing the one person business thing. I never want to, you know, build with anyone else ever again. But then when you meet the right person and you see, and it's a scenario where 1 + 1 = 11, you know, that's very exciting. And that's something that is a lot of fun. But you also, you know, and then it's a whole rabbit hole. You have to be on the same page. You have to want similar things. You want to build similar type of business. I don't think it would work if Dickie and I wanted to build very different types of businesses. You know, it works because we are very aligned on, like, we want a lot of the same things. And so that's why it works so well.
I don't know if you just made that up, but I really like the 1 + 1 = 11. I don't know why people say 1 + 1 = 3, but the ones coming together, it's actually, I don't know, it just clicked with me. But yeah, I think that's super cool. And watching the Espresso Hour episodes on YouTube, it's clear the chemistry, it's clear the mutual respect, and it's clear how much you guys build on each other's ideas. And it's seeing it in real time is really cool. That's what I love about that show. And
Mm.
there is really something to being around like-minded people, right? And you've thrived in a number of situations where there was like-minded people, where you're like, you played a lot of hockey, and then in the WoW community, and then in the Quora community, and combining that with like this idea that you've talked about, hanging around the hoop and like being around people that are ahead of you and doing really cool things, and like-minded. And so just this idea of community, and you have Ship 30 for 30 is like your flagship business. Can you talk a little bit about what that is, and particularly the community element of it, and why that's so important?
Yeah. So I guess for context, Ship 30 is a cohort-based writing challenge that helps people start writing on the internet, all the fundamentals of writing in the digital world. We've had over 10,000 people go through the program at this point. But the community element, the reason that it's so important, at least in the Ship 30 context, is because, you know, learning is hard. Learning is lonely. Writing is lonely. Doing it by yourself is lonely. Doing it with other people is not. You know, it's kind of that simple. But the more meta concept is, and this is something that I've really internalized over the years. I have a very obsessive personality, and so whenever I get interested in something, I get very obsessed over it, and I always want to find the fastest way to grow at it. And one of the key pillars in sort of my personal mastery framework is you have to find a way to surround yourself with other people that are trying to improve at the same thing. I saw it with gaming, I saw it with bodybuilding, I saw it on Quora, I saw it working my first job, I saw it building my first company. Whenever you spend time around other people and they're all getting better, inherently their learnings and their improvements rub off on you. So the way I like to explain it is, if you're rap and hip hop fan. Eminem has a camp and a sound. And, he worked with the Slaughterhouse guys, and they all have this very, fast alliteration wordplay sound. And then, you had the Arrow with like Young Money and Lil Wayne and Drake and Nicki Minaj, and they all had a sound. And if you listen closely, they all sort of have similarities between them, And then you had like, back in the day, it was like the West Coast, Tupac and Snoop and everybody, and then the East Coast and Biggie and Puff and all. And like, if you go through musically, it makes a lot of sense to me, because if you go through all these different camps, all the people that would spend time with each other, they all rubbed off on each other, and you can hear the similarities between them. And so when you're improving at something, one of your first jobs is to go, where's my camp? Like, what camp do I want to be in? And so if you're a writer, there's lots of different camps. Like, some writers go, I want to be the next, New Yorker short story writer. Well, the camp you probably want to find a way into is some sort of MFA program at a top school that is, not focused on making money. They're just focused on how do you get a short story in the New Yorker, and how do you write in this sort of like New York elite style. Different camp, if you're like, hey, I really want the freedom of writing on my own terms, and I want to do what I want to do, and I want to understand self-publishing, and I want to make money doing it, and I want to launch digital products, you might come into the Ship30 ecosystem and go, wow, that's the camp I want to be surrounded by. Why? Because everyone in that camp is doing that thing. And so whenever you're surrounded by whoever's doing the same thing as you, all of a sudden the default is, well, if everyone else is doing it here, why shouldn't I? Why can't I? And your learning curve accelerates exponentially. It's why Dickie and I just, paid to join this big mastermind. You walk into a room, 150 entrepreneurs, every person there has a business doing 100K, 200K, 300K, 500K, $1 million a month. All of a sudden you start thinking to yourself, well, if all these people can do it, why can't I? And that rubs off on you very, very quickly. And then all of a sudden you get exposed to everyone. Oh, that guy's doing something interesting there. That woman's doing something interesting there. Your whole learning process accelerates.
One of the examples of that that's happening now that a lot of people point to is Mr. Beast, right? He's come out and talked a lot about how him and 3 or 4 of his friends, I think it was 3 or 4 total, they would just obsess all day, every day, sit on Zoom calls for 10 hours, 12 hours, and just analyze thumbnails and test things and tweak. And because there's a bunch of them and they're all putting out their own content and getting feedback and coming together, and that's their circle, and that, yes, they're rubbing off on each other, but they're also having that exponential learning curve because everyone's learning in their own unique ways and sharing them. And then there's also, when it comes to something like Ship30, I've heard a lot of stuff with the cohorts where it's like, the material's great and I learned a lot and it was valuable, and that paid for it by itself. But what was even better than that was the networking. So it's like, yes, they're rubbing off on me from a tangible like content perspective, but also going forward, so many of these people are going to be doing awesome things because look, here they are paying to get better. That means someone's taking their life seriously and their content journey seriously. And going forward, now you have this like circle of people that you can continue to get those type of benefits off well into the future. And you and Dickie now are building this new studio out, the Shipyard. And I think you want to have a community element to that too, where people are going to come by in Miami. You have this big open area where you want to build a podcast studio and a little gym setup and all the fun stuff you have. I'm curious, are you going to build the perfect bathroom in there with a tray table coming out of the wall and a laptop charging next to the plunger and a mini fridge with endless bottles of orange juice?
I definitely might. And I think you'll only get that reference if you've done your homework.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see what that space turns out to be. What are you most excited about with the Shipyard?
Next logical step. It's just the journey of building anything is not getting too ahead of yourself, but always pushing for more, or at least that's how I like to think about it. And it just feels like the next logical step. It's going to be really cool to increase the value of our content. It's going to be really cool to create different types of things. We've been starting to experiment more with video and audio and this podcast a lot. It's going to be cool to have a space where we can invite other creators, talk to them. Something Dickie and I really enjoy talking about is auditing other people's businesses, seeing inside their business models. And again, it goes back to the art and business, looking at what someone's creating. And I think Dickie's a lot better than me at being able to spot business bottlenecks and sort of look at operationally what can be improved. Um, and same thing, like I love looking at what people are creating and going, oh, you could easily turn that into a product. Here's how I would frame that. Here's how I would position that. Here's what the category should be, and so getting to do that live with other creators, I think would be super fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you guys do, and thank you for sharing the building process. I know you just put out the first YouTube video, so everyone should go check that out. Kind of looking at the space and just brainstorming, and excited to yeah, you could see the passion in you guys about all the opportunities. So Cole, I just wanted to thank you, man, for coming on the show. I really admire you. I think that your story is inspiring. I think that it's really cool to see how hard work really pays off, and it doesn't matter what you choose to do. Also, this idea that you can pivot at any point based on what's happening in your life and what you're passionate about and what presents itself, and then just making the most of those opportunities. And I'm grateful to be building a relationship with you. So thank you for coming on the show. Is there something that you'd like to share with anybody, maybe about where to find you, maybe talk about your new book, any final words and parting thoughts?
And just thanks for having me. Always great to chat. And yeah, just Twitter, if anyone has questions, I feel really strongly about um, paying it forward and sharing all the things I've learned, because I didn't have that when I graduated school, and I wanted to figure out how to make a living as a writer and how to build this career for myself. I did not have very many people to look to, and I had to learn a lot of these things on my own. So I'm just passionate about helping other writers. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help.
Thank you, man. I appreciate your time so much.
Thanks, Greg. This is awesome.